There is a 21-year-old walking into a tennis stadium in Ohio right now who has never won a Grand Slam. And somehow, before she has hit a single ball this week, tournament staff, sponsors, and some of the biggest names in the sport's history are already talking about her like she's the most important thing to happen to this game in a decade. That's not hype from a fan account. That's Andy Roddick. That's a former British number one. That's a Grand Slam champion who just called her comparable to Serena Williams, and by the time I finish telling you what happened after he said that, you're going to understand why that single sentence split the tennis world in half this week. But before I get into the part that turned into an actual online firestorm, the comparison that Serena Williams' own fans are furious about right now, I need you to do one thing. If stories about athletes who are quietly rewriting what's possible for their country actually move you, hit subscribe now, because this story is not finished. Cincinnati is just the beginning of what could be the loudest month of Eala's career, and I am not letting this channel miss a second of it. Okay. Let's build this properly, because you need the full picture before the twist makes sense. Eala arrives at the Cincinnati Open this week as the 17th seed, the highest seeding of her career at a WTA 1000 event. That number matters more than it sounds. As a seeded player, she gets a first-round bye, meaning she walks straight into the second round without playing a single qualifying match. 6 months ago, nobody would have predicted that. A year ago, almost nobody outside the Philippines could have told you her name. Here's how fast this actually happened. In 2022, at 17 years old, she won the US Open girls singles title without dropping a single set, becoming the first Filipino player ever to win a junior Grand Slam. That was supposed to be the headline for years. Instead, it turned out to be the opening line. In 2025, playing as a wild card at the Miami Open, she did something almost no one saw coming. She beat 3 Grand Slam champions in a row, Jelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, and Iga Swiatek, becoming the first Filipina to ever reach a WTA Tour semifinal. A few months later, at the US Open, she rallied back from a set and a breakdown to win a 3-set thriller, becoming the first Filipino woman in history to win a Grand Slam main draw match. She stood there afterward and said something that tells you exactly why the fans followed her the way they did. I don't have a home tournament, so having this community behind me here, it really made me feel like I was home. Now hold that thought, because this year, that feeling multiplied into something nobody in tennis had a name for yet. This summer, at Wimbledon, 29-seeded Eala walked onto center court against defending champion Iga Swiatek, the same player she'd beaten in Miami, and did it again, defeating Swiatek 7-6, 6-2 to become the first Filipina to reach the second week of a Grand Slam. Within hours, one comment appeared under the celebration post that made the entire Philippines lose their minds. 2 words, from a woman Eala has called her childhood idol since she was a little girl. Maria Sharapova simply wrote, "A star." Eala later admitted what that moment actually meant to her. Not the ranking points. Not the prize money. Just this, knowing that Maria Sharapova knew who she was. Then came Washington. Unseeded, she went through a gauntlet, Olympic champion Qin Wencheng, defending champion Leylah Fernandez, former world number 1 Naomi Osaka, and finally world number 3 Jessica Pegula in the final, and won her first ever WTA Tour singles title. That's 4 life-changing weeks. A junior slam at 17. A Grand Slam breakthrough at 20. A Wimbledon upset over the defending champion at 21. And her first tour title, all inside one summer. If you think that's already too much for one person to carry, you haven't heard what happened next. Because winning wasn't actually the biggest story of her month. The crowds were. By the time she landed in Toronto for the National Bank Open, something had shifted. Tickets for her opening match sold out so fast that tournament director Carl Hale said he had never seen a player ranked outside the top 5 have that kind of effect on ticket sales. Every single one of her matches there sold out a 12,000-seat stadium. The tournament even added Filipino dishes, chicken adobo and lumpia, to the food court outside the arena because the demand was that real. And this is where it stopped being just a nice story and turned into something tennis had to actually reckon with. Coco Gauff, who has played Eala multiple times, was asked directly what she thought about the wave of Filipino fans following her everywhere. Her answer wasn't polite deflection. It was full endorsement. "I think the demographic that Alex is bringing to the sport of tennis is so great," Gauff said. "I think all of us should really embrace that, because we're all benefiting from it." Danielle Collins, one of the fiercest competitors on tour, said something almost tender by comparison. "I love how comfortable she is in her own skin. I love how genuinely kind she is," Collins said, admitting she admired the softness in someone so competitive on court. That's two of the toughest players in women's tennis, unprompted, saying the same thing in different words. This is good for the sport. And then Andy Roddick, a former world number 1 and US Open champion, went even further, defending Eala against critics who said she was getting too much attention before she'd won anything. "I am here for Eala Mania," Roddick said on his podcast. He didn't stop there. He called it a movement, a sect of tennis fandom that largely didn't exist a couple of years ago. Okay. Now here's the part that actually blew this whole story wide open, the one I promised you at the start. Just days ago, former British number 1 Greg Rusedski went on his own podcast and made a comparison that no one in tennis makes lightly. Talking about Eala's ability to create excitement wherever she plays, he said plainly, "There's only one other person that I can compare to her sort of star status. It's Serena Williams." Read that again. Not her game. Not her ranking. Her star power, placed next to the most iconic name in the history of women's tennis, by a former top 5 player who has spent decades watching this sport. The internet did not take it well. The moment that clip spread, Serena Williams' own fanbase pushed back hard. One fan called the comparison ridiculous, arguing that Serena and Venus are household names far beyond tennis, while most casual sports fans still wouldn't recognize Eala's face. Another comment simply said the tennis world had lost their minds. It turned into a genuine online argument, Rusedski's take defended by some, torn apart by others, for days. Here's why that fight actually matters more than it looks like it does. Nobody starts a real argument over a nobody. You don't get Serena Williams' fanbase mobilizing to push back on a comparison unless the comparison actually landed hard enough to threaten something. Whether you think Rusedski was right or completely out of line, the fact that this argument is even happening tells you Eala has crossed some invisible line most players never reach. So now, all of that, the Junior Slam, the Miami run, the Wimbledon upset, the Washington title, the sold-out Toronto stadiums, the Sharapova comment, the Serena comparison and the backlash it caused, all of it is walking into Cincinnati this week under a 17 seed and a first-round bye. The question nobody can answer yet is the one that should be keeping every tournament organizer up at night between now and August 30th. If Cincinnati produces even a fraction of what Toronto did, and then the US Open arrives in Flushing Meadows, a borough with one of the largest Filipino-American communities anywhere in the country, what happens to this sport when that crowd shows up at a Grand Slam? I don't have that answer yet. Nobody does. That's exactly why I need you to stay close to this story, because whatever happens over these next 3 weeks is going to answer a question tennis has never had to ask before. Tell me in the comments, do you think Rusedski's Serena comparison was fair, or was it too far? And if you've been following Eala since before any of this, before Miami, before Wimbledon, before Washington, say so below, because this community deserves to be seen too. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe now, turn on notifications, because the moment Eala steps onto that Cincinnati court, we're covering exactly what happens, win or lose. This story is far from over. I'll see you in the next one.